Hello, everybody. I'm Sharon Stein from the Women in Surgery Committee of the American College of Surgeons, and I am honored to be joined today by Sharmila Dissanaike, who is the chair of Texas Tech and a fabulous member of our surgical community, and she's going to give us a little bit about what I wish I knew.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Sharon. I really am very appreciative of the opportunity to talk to you all. I think it's a mix. There are some things I did that I'm very happy I did. I'm like, oh, I'm glad I thought of that. And other things that you learn later on. And so on the question of what I wish I'd known, one of the things I wanted to start off with is a suggestion to all the people watching, the younger faculty, the attending surgeons, private surgeons, as well as trainees, is to keep track of things you do when you do them. I have the good fortune to be naturally pretty well organized. Cannot take any credit for it. I inherited it from my mother. My mother was so organized that if Excel had been invented when we were young, she would have totally run our lives by Excel. But I learned that from her. And the organizational skill is so helpful as a resident to keep you sane, but also as a junior surgeon. And one thing I did that is really important. So you have your CV, and I would update my CV in real time. So every time I got invited to give a talk, do anything, something like this, media performance, everything, it went in one of two places. It either goes on your formal CV, obviously publications and things like that. But there are so many things we do that don't quite qualify, but we should still take credit for. So if I decided to talk to residents about financial management, for example, I would put that in this other document, and I never really gave it a name, but it was sort of the updates document that, okay, on this date, I talked to the residents about this, about 30 people attended. And what ended up happening is when I was going up for promotion the first time, oh my goodness, it was so helpful because they wanted to know those things. And if I hadn't written it in real time, there is no way I would have been able to go back and get credit for all the things I've done, because you do these things, right? The med students want you to give a talk to surgery club. You do so many things and you don't keep track. So especially if you're in academia, but even if not, I think you really need a document for all these little things. And then you also need to keep your CV updated. And I think that will be one really big thing for career success.
I love that. And actually, having nominated people for American College of Surgeons position, it's great when they already have a whole document list of what they've done. That's terrific. How do you do that? So you get a invitation and you just go ahead and record it right there and then?
Right there and then. And so what I do is I put it on the CV then and there. Then once I've, and I put the date of the talk and all of that. What I do actually, when I get the acceptance notifications for manuscripts, I put them in there as well. Now then every few months I have to go in and now update because, all the publication data doesn't come out till later, but at least I won't forget it. And so I'd rather have some things as in press or accepted for publication for a few months, longer, and rather than risk losing something that, you put a lot of work into these things. So yeah, I update. So my CV gets updated almost every week, actually. And as long as you just get into the habit of, as soon as you get it, I use my email as my to-do box. So my inbox is to do. So if I get an invitation, I respond saying, great, I'd love to do this, just like this. Then I don't delete that email until I've added it to one of those two documents. And then I delete it from my inbox. So this way I kind of have a running to-do list and I don't lose track of things.
I love that. And do you do mentors as well? Like when you have a mentorship meeting, because that's one of the things I know when people go up for promotion, their list of mentees, which is, there's not really a formal place on most CVs.
That goes in my update document, who I'm mentoring, research mentorship versus career mentorship, anything that I do practically is in at least that second document. And I think that's becoming more important. So I'm glad you brought that up, Sharon, because I think originally in standard academia, that didn't count for much unless you were a PhD, obviously, and you have people in your lab. But I think nowadays people realize that fostering others is such an important leadership trait that you go higher in people's estimation if you can show tangibly that you've invested time and energy in helping other people do well. I think in the modern world, whether you're in academia or private practice, that's a really great skill. And for committee positions, like you mentioned, becoming FACS or all these other letters that are available, I think that is an important thing to document. So I'm glad you mentioned it. One thing that I think it's important to remember as you go in, as you go up, a lot of people get a little tense, I think, about how am I going to manage work-life balance? I get that question all the time. And I think one of the things is to realize that there are different times in your life to focus on different things. And I think you have to understand that natural ebb and flow. I do see a lot of young people especially try to overmanage that. It's almost like in any given day, I should have 8 hours of work and then 1 hour to work out and then 1 hour with my, significant other, and then 2 hours with the kids. I mean, you can't live like that. It's not reasonable. You have to have some ebb and flow, give and take. I think going in with that philosophy, that when you first start a new job, yeah, your first month is going to be a little chaotic and you need to expect you'll spend more time at work than at other places while you're figuring this all out. But then, you figure out when you're going to take a vacation and plot that ahead of time and plan it. One thing I've found that helps with this is to build it all into your calendar. So I use my work calendar for everything. It doesn't bother me that someone else might be able to see if I'm having drinks with friends. I don't care. I'm not doing anything wrong. It can be on my work calendar because I can't do the juggling, merging multiple calendars. That would drive me crazy. So I literally schedule all my appointments, whether that's for fun or my hairdresser or whatever it is, on my same calendar. And that actually is mentally reassuring for me because it's all there in one place. And if a loved one has something that you need to go support them, like a doctor's appointment or anything, it's right there. And I know to take sick leave for that time or whatever it is. I think putting it all in one place and understanding that all of these things are important, and we just need to know when we're giving energy to this thing versus giving energy to the other. I think the other benefit is we can then see over time, okay, it looks like, I have most of my clinical things on this day, but this day is a bit lighter. And so maybe I can use that afternoon for some thought. Maybe I can go on some walking meetings. It lets you build in some things that might help get your work-life balance once you see how it all lays out. And that's something I've found helpful. Treating your social life and your personal life as importantly as you would work, I think helps a lot.
I love that. And I love the fact that you go back and you look at your calendar both to kind of evaluate. You also kind of evaluate, say, gosh, I haven't spent as much time as I wanted to with family or taking time for myself.
So that I honestly say, I think you can feel, right? You don't have to go to a calendar to know that. Like you feel when one thing is not the other, is not coming out as much. For me, my father's in Sri Lanka. And so for me to go see him, I have to make that a priority and schedule that visit. And one of the things I've learned is things like that get to the bottom of the pile if you don't consciously move them to the top. It's like, how financial planners will say, pay yourself first, right? So what they mean is put money into savings before you do some other things so that it doesn't go vanish by the end of the month. It's the same kind of concept. I think if something's important, you block the time for it. And if that means your whole weekend, you're not going to do any work, you're going to block it off, that's fine. For me, my husband and I have coffee every morning and I actually get on the computer, do a little bit of work. That's okay for me. It works out. I check my email. I do those things. It's that morning. I dedicate that time. But we're having coffee, we're joking, we're listening to music, sitting on the patio. It doesn't feel that bad. And so it's not that you have to have strict boundaries that I work 9 to 5. I mean, no surgeon really just works 9 to 5, but you can't really set those strict boundaries, but you can decide what works for you. Because obviously if I wasn't willing to do some weekend and after hours work, I wouldn't be doing half the things I'm doing now. And you're the same way. And I know most people are, right? You've got to be willing to do volunteer activities like anything to do with the American College of Surgeons or the Association of Women Surgeons. I mean, all of that is volunteer. So some of that's going to happen after hours, and that's fine. If it brings you joy, that's what you do. I actually extrapolate that to life, because there are some things that other people may consider work that actually bring one individual great joy. And I'll give you an example. I love going out and talking to people and doing a grand rounds and meeting residents. I love that. It's so much fun. And yes, it's work, but it's time and energy I'm very happy to spend because it brings me joy. And so you find what brings you joy. But here's the trick for the people who are just starting out. You don't know ahead of time what's going to bring you joy till you try it. You really don't. I mean, you can't predict this. You just have to try it and see. So I think early in your career, and I definitely did this, you have to say yes to a lot of things. And then when you realize something maybe isn't that great for you, you try to gracefully bow out. But if you don't try, you may never even find the thing that you were really meant to spend some time doing.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for spending a little time, putting us in your calendar and spending a little time with us with I wish I knew.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.